Do you want to supercharge your garden with a 2,000-year-old secret that's so simple, you're going to wish you knew it sooner? Stick around. This is going to blow your mind. Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and today we are going to be diving into dirt, literally, with Dennis and Michelle as we explore the world of biochar.
And I'm looking forward to this. This is a techno thing that I've just been excited about since you mentioned it.
We learned about this actually from one of our Homestead members, Paula, who had done a bunch of research on this. And when she started talking, of course, you know, the word biochar had no frame of reference for me. I was like, I don't even know what it is or why it's important. And by the time she was done with her presentation, I was like, okay, we're going to go home and build a biochar kiln because we've got to have this. And so it totally convinced us.
And we watched a lot of videos on YouTube of other people who made biochar. And we figured out all the things that they did wrong. And I don't mean that in the nicest way. But, you know, it's like you got to build something that's practical to use over and over and over again. Yeah. And so that's what we've done.
So tell us why we would even want biochar. What is biochar?
You know, in a nutshell, you know, biochar creates permanent compost, which feeds your ground and creates an environment for a nutrient-rich mycelium to flourish and grow. It is the most amazing thing that can be put into your ground and realize that it never decomposes.
So put it this way, you really have two choices if you want to grow things. You can either spend lots of money every year buying various fertilizers, nitrogen, phosphorus, etc., and not cooperating with how God made soil, or you can learn how to do it the way God made the soil to work. And that's essentially what biochar does. It is an amendment to soil that makes that soil return to its roots, and I say that tongue in cheek, of how God intended it to work. So everybody thinks of the roots of a tree as where the plant gets all of its nutrients. That's true, but if you're feeding it the nutrients, you always have to feed it the nutrients, fertilizers or whatever. If you make the soil, build the soil so that the soil feeds it, then that mycelium, think of mycelium like a giant spider web underground. Mycelium can reach out for hundreds of feet or even miles and get nutrients wherever they exist in the soil and bring it back and put it into the roots of your plant.
I think that's so amazing.
Mycelium, you know, when I first heard that word, I didn't even know what it was, but if you think of the root system of a mushroom, because a lot of people connect mycelium with mushrooms, but it's more than that. But it is a superhighway of nutrients, and it actually attaches itself to the roots of the plants and then goes out and brings in all the nutrients that plant needs. And biochar works in such a symbiotic relationship with the mycelium to bring these amazing nutrients, and the biochar has the capacity to hold more nutrients in its little structure than you could even imagine. I mean, it's phenomenal how many things can fit inside of it, which will continue to grow and continue to feed your plants.
I call it permanent fertilizer because, you know, once you put it into the soil, it basically never decomposes. That biochar will last in the soil up to 1,000 years.
Wow.
And so it will continue to
feed,
house the mycelium, which the mycelium then feeds all of your plants. And so that's why I call it permanent fertilizer.
Yeah.
The process that was done hundreds and hundreds of years ago was different than what we would do today. But at the end of this video, we're going to explain how to make a kiln where you can make your own biochar. But the short version is that you are burning or cooking, if you prefer, organic matter. Now, it can be any organic matter. It could be the stalks of corn stalks, for example. We happen to live in a forest, so we use wood. And I would say wood makes the best biochar. Even if you live in the city and you've got trees that you occasionally have to trim limbs off of, or maybe you have a big ice storm come through and you lose some limbs, don't let the city haul those off. Make biochar out of them, because now you've made something that's a very long lasting benefit to your soil and to the plants that you grow in your soil.
Well, one of the questions that I have here is why haven't I heard about this more than it sounds like just a wonderful thing that people should be doing, and I just haven't heard much about it.
Because you're not a gardener geek.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a good one because this is exciting.
It's funny because it is one of those things. It's one of the biggest kept secrets that's been around for literally centuries. But because there's so much money in fertilizers and all of that, it's not promoted. But it's just now starting, as a permaculture has really become more important to people as they realize that they are needing to not only just throw chemicals in the ground, but actually help the ground to thrive. This is becoming a key thing because of its ability to just protect the soil, retain moisture, provide a home for the nutrients that all those plants need and the microbes. I mean, it is just wonderful how it packs everything that plant needs into those, biochar.
So I'll give you a little history of it, and this might even help additionally to answer the question, why haven't we heard of it? Like we said, we hadn't heard of it either till our friend Paula taught a brief class at our Homestead group meeting. This has been around since 450 years BC. And in the Amazon rainforest, they have a different problem than what you and I typically have. And that is that they get so much rain that things decompose too fast. And so, they get the monsoon rains, and any nutrients that they might have in the way of a compost, it all washes away. And so the plant doesn't get it. So they're actually the ones in the Amazon rainforest that figured out how to do this. They found that the charcoal left after burning wood, specifically that was maybe at the bottom of the pile that didn't get much oxygen, that it could be made into what we now call biochar. And so you can look that up on Wikipedia, and it shows pictures of soil that's 20 feet deep, where over hundreds of years they've been using biochar to amend the soil in the area of the Amazon rainforest, and things grow very well because it doesn't decompose at all. So it holds the nutrients, and it holds that mycelium that feeds the nutrients to all the plants. So that's where it came from.
It's just kind of like a miracle, right? A little miracle.
It is so cool.
It doesn't decompose.
I mean, when we heard about it, I was so excited. I was like, like you, I was like, how have we not known? I mean, I've been gardening for years and never even heard the term. So, there's so many things that it can do. It supercharges your soil. Like I said, it helps your soil to hold on to moisture, which, in a lot of climates, like here in Texas, yours. It's really important that we keep the moisture that we get, and that it doesn't get, just zapped away. I mean, we live on sand, so what moisture we get tends to just, flow right on through. Well, this enables us to hold on to that, along with the organic things that we already do with the compost and the wood chips. But this is that additional piece to the whole puzzle that really makes it amazing.
Michelle probably won't like me saying this, but so we used biochar in our vegetable garden for the first time this year, and Michelle actually won the tomato contest, both for the most beautiful tomatoes and the best tasting tomatoes at her Master Gardeners meeting recently.
That was
I love that picture of that tomato. That is so incredibly cool. Like, congratulations. So do you attribute it to your fabulousness, or do you attribute it to the biochar?
I don't know. I mean, obviously this is the first year I used biochar, but it's hard to say. I don't know. It certainly is a component. I'll put it that way. I mean, we work hard to try to create an environment where we are as nutrient dense as possible in the soil so that our plants have all the things they need to be good and healthy. So,
we grow everything totally organically. So there's no chemistry used whatsoever other than what God put in the earth.
It really does help retain the nutrients that are in the ground so that you don't get them washed away. But because the biochar is basically small little porous pieces of this wood that has been burned at a high temperature, but it not consumed. Like Dennis says, it's more cooked than burned. It creates a giant sponge, to say another way. And that sponge, when it's inoculated, which we'll talk about in a minute, with all the good nutrients, becomes a bank that is continually depositing those things back into your garden and into your plants. I had put mycelium actually in my garden a few years ago because it is the same way. It will continue to grow. Mycelium just multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. And it's wonderful. But when I added this to the garden, I felt like, now we've created such a wonderful environment where all of those things can really flourish. But on top of that is the benefit that the biochar has to actually clean things that are damaged or contaminated, be it your water or your land.
Can you explain that?
It actually, pulls those things out.
So if you take the charcoal, the biochar, that has not been inoculated, and you put it into your soil, if you did that, you put it in the soil where you're planting things, it will actually be very damaging because it's going to suck up or absorb whatever it can where you placed it. So that's why you have to inoculate. But the converse is also true. If you take uninoculated biochar, so it's just dry, came out of the kiln, and you have an area where there's been some sort of chemical spill or environmental hazards of any kind, you put the biochar in the soil and it will absorb all that defective, all that harmful stuff out of the soil and return your soil to the way God originally made it. It will
similar
clean it
to
up.
the function of charcoal.
Yes.
Dioxins, for example, one of the most hazardous materials known to man. Activated charcoal or biochar will clean dioxin out of the soil.
Interesting.
Yeah, I actually had found online when I was first looking into this, there is a young girl in her 20s that had actually won some awards because she had taken this concept and created biomats of biochar that were placed on top of oil spills, and that they found they tested the ground repeatedly, and within like 2 months that ground was completely free of contaminants.
Whoa, that's so cool.
I know. It's like,
so
how have we not used this more? I mean, and so there's a lot of little things that have to be done. There's all these research on what kinds of woods or what kind of things you burn and to make the most porous, depending on what you're trying to absorb. People who are far more scientific than I have done a lot of research into that, and they're still trying to fine tune it, but it is definitely there. And I mean, the forever chemicals that are in the water and the land, they don't have to be there forever. This can actually absorb them.
Yeah, the PFAS plastics that's in our water and things like that. A biochar can remove those out of that environment, out of the water and out of the soil.
You can't just throw the biochar in the garden. After you've done it, which we'll talk about the process of doing the biochar. But after that, what I do is I have a metal can that's just designated for what we call poop water. We just take animal poop, throw it in there, put water in it, and have it sitting ready so that when the biochar is done, I just dump the biochar in there And I actually have to put a basket on top with a weight to kind of, because it floats. It's super light.
Because it's full of air
Yeah,
when you first put it in
it'll
there.
just float. So you have to weight it down. And then I put the lid on and I just leave it for about at least 3 days. But, there were times that I'd left it, longer than that. It doesn't matter. It's not going to get over inoculated. And then I strain it out and then put it into a tub. And then I'm able to then put it into the format that I need for my garden. But that's one way. Another way is a lot of people, there's a shortcut. You can just take it and actually add it into your compost and let your compost actually do the process of inoculating it. But the compost does have to have more than just wood and leaves. It needs to have vegetables or animal poop or something in there that's going to give some good nutrients and so forth to help it, really get good and inoculated.
So if you just wanted to add it to your compost pit and let it stay there, then the next spring when you're putting compost on everything, it's already
goes into your garden. Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
And there are some ratios for that. The compost, it's, 1-to-1. So you can actually do a 1-to-1 on the compost mix. You don't want to do that high of a ratio in your garden. They say it's basically, if you're putting it in your garden, you do about a 1 inch on top. I didn't do quite that thick because I'm a little more cautious. They say start slow and work your way up. You can always add in more, but you don't want to overdo it. And so I did more of a dusting of it instead of throwing a full 1 inch down. And then as I planted and so forth, and as I'm in the garden, it gets turned in. But when you actually plant your new plants, you want to plant it below that so that it's kind of above it. And then it gets worked in, over time into the garden.
And so we'll add more biochar each year for a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I didn't do it very thick.
Yeah. And I didn't do it real thick, and I didn't do it everywhere. Sometimes I only put it where I was planting and I didn't cover the whole bed. It kind of depended on what I was doing in each of my gardens.
Interesting. So if mine are raised beds and I'm functioning pretty much with the top foot, eventually I want 6 inches of that to be biochar. Is that what I'm understanding right? Or
no, I would start off with 1 inch to 2 inches and see how your garden does. And then if you feel like it needs more, you can always add more. But I wouldn't go whole hog with more of that right away.
So I only continue year after year adding it until I feel like it's achieved its maximum.
Right. Because it is permanent. You don't have to continue to keep adding it. Now, that your garden beds, go down in volume, because your plant is absorbing some of those nutrients and rain washes out some. And so you will periodically come back. And that's where it's helpful if you throw it into your compost bin. It's already in there, and then you don't have to worry about it. It can get thrown in.
Okay, so we want to talk about how we made a biochar kiln. We watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and there were a lot of good ideas out there, and we tried to take the best of all the ideas to make something that would really work for us, and I think would work for most people. You can make a biochar very small with 2 number 10 cans, poking a hole in one end and crimping them so the 2 cans fit together, and fill it up with pieces of wood or any kind of carbon matter, and lay it in the coals of a fire if you have a fire pit. So you can start small. We did that, and then we realized it would take us forever to make enough for her garden.
Because it shrinks. It does shrink. And so, you fill the can full and you get about this much.
Yeah. So whatever size you start with, you're going to end up just a little less than half of that.
Yeah.
Once it's finished cooking. I say cooking, burning, whatever. A lot of people out there use a 55-gallon drum and then put a 30-gallon container inside of that. The 2 reasons that I didn't like that idea: number 1, it didn't leave enough room for the firewood outside of the inside container. So as you'll see in the pictures, you start with a 55-gallon drum, and I chose a 16-gallon drum for the inside. Trust me, when you're trying to come up with enough wood to tightly pack a 16-gallon drum, it takes a lot of wood cut up really small because you're trying to pack it solid.
You wanted as much space used as possible. So
can we talk about the wood for just a second?
uh-huh.
So I can use twigs. Can I use wood chips?
You
Yes.
can. You just have to understand the smaller the pieces are, the higher the chance is that it might disintegrate. So
and
you don't want to go too
You don't
small.
want to use itty bitty wood chips, maybe big wood chips.
Right.
Okay.
But bark, in any kind of organic material, really.
If you go at least the size of your finger as the smallest size, you're probably safe.
Okay, so we I don't remember. We've done probably 6 or 8 different batches of biochar.
We're still experimenting.
And I find that anything above 1.5 inches in diameter, so a tree limb bigger than 1.5 inches, becomes a little bit difficult to handle when you're ready to break it into smaller pieces and then crunch it down,
at the
which
end.
Michelle will talk about at the end. So I try and keep it under 1.5 inches. Yes, you could fill up the can really fast with 3 and 4 inch pieces of wood, but I save the 3 and 4 inch pieces of wood for the fire that's cooking the inside part. So you're taking this 16-gallon drum, and we'll start with the outside drum. So 55-gallon drum, and you're going to drill 2 inches up from the bottom of the 55-gallon drum, every 6 inches all the way around. You're going to drill a 1/2 inch hole. And then on the bottom, you're going to drill a dozen or more 1/2 inch holes on the bottom as well. Now, I got the idea later after the first or second batch of biochar that we cooked that I wished I had put the angle iron in the bottom of the 55-gallon barrel at first. And so what I did is I got some very thick 2 inch by 2 inch angle iron. And when I say thick, we're talking more than 1/8 of an inch thick. So 1/4 inch thick, heavy stuff that's not going to burn up because it's going to be sitting at the bottom of your fire. And then I used stainless steel bolts and attached 3 pieces of that angle iron to the bottom because the inside drum is going to sit on that, and that angle iron keeps all of the embers from the fire burning around the outside from smothering all the holes on the bottom of that can. Okay, so that's, and I used bricks in the bottom at first to set the can on, but after a couple of fires, they were completely disintegrated. So I decided that wasn't a very good way to go. Okay, so then to the 55-gallon drum, if you buy a new drum like I did, these drums will come with a rubber or probably silicone gasket on the inside of it. Make sure you remove that because the first time you burn it, you don't want all that rubber or silicone getting into your biochar.
Yeah.
So remove it, remove all the glue, clean it completely clean. And the other thing I'll mention is when you're buying, if you're going to buy a 55-gallon drum, they have kind that have a lever clip that clips the lid on. Buy one that has a big bolt that you have to screw on. It takes you a little bit longer, but it will last through many, many, many burnings where that clip won't last because it's not near as heavy. Then I also put affixed a chimney to the top of that. And I eventually, not the first time, but later I put a cap on the chimney so that I could still use it when it was raining outside. So that's the 55-gallon drum. Now on the inside, I took a 16-gallon drum. I bought both of these brand new off of Amazon. Where else? We live way out in the country, so that's how we get things out here. And it's the same criteria. It's got a screw-on metal lid, and I had to take the seal out of the lid. To that 16-gallon, I drilled 1/2 inch holes in the lid only.
That's it. Nowhere else.
Nowhere else on that 16-gallon. And so you're going to fill that 16-gallon drum up with the wood that's going to become your biochar. and then you're going to screw the lid on, and then you got to turn the whole thing upside down and set it down into the 55-gallon drum, and it sits on the angle
So
iron.
the holes are at the bottom, and that's why it has low oxygen, so it doesn't consume the wood. So there's very little oxygen getting in there with your wood.
Because there's no holes except on the bottom of that once you turn the 16-gallon drum upside down, because the only holes are on the bottom, air only goes out from the heat, because the heat around the outside of that drum heats up the air on the inside, which forces it out the bottom. That's why you have a low oxygen environment that wood is cooking in.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we found that it's real important to use very dry wood when doing this.
We had a few batches that, I was using wood that was a little bit wet, and I would have to cook it more than once.
Yeah.
To get it fully.
Yeah, we opened it up and realized, nah, it's not done. Had to do it again.
Yeah.
Learn from our mistakes and cut the wood pretty uniform. We use loppers a lot of times, and he uses a wood splitter between the two.
You remember in our last video we did with you some of the tools. So if you've got a bunch of limbs, you take that battery powered electric lopper, and I would literally take a limb and sit there, go zip, 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 dropping pieces in the can as I go. And you can fill it up pretty quickly with a lot less effort than doing it manually. And so then after you've filled the 16-gallon inner drum, screwed the lid on tight, turned it upside down and set it in the 55-gallon drum, now you've got to fill up around the outside of it. And this is why I suggest the 16-gallon inside drum, is because now you've still got a good 4 inches all the way around that drum to put your firewood that you're going to burn. If you use the 30-gallon inside drum, the only thing you're going to be able to put around it are boards, thin boards like 1-bys. Not a lot of people have access to a lot of excess 1-bys, but a lot of people have firewood. Again, you want to use wood that's going to burn successfully, so don't use green or wet wood in there. You want something that's dry. I use firewood. If you've got it, if you have oak, I prefer using a really hardwood like oak or hickory or whatever. It burns longer. Because it burns a very long time.
And hotter.
So the longer it burns, the hotter it burns, the more likely you are to have a good charcoal batch with one burning. You have to kind of watch it when it's first getting started. So put the lid on, get the fire started, and I'll put cardboard and paper and whatever, some things in there.
Just a few things.
Just to get it started. And like any fire, you want some kindling, some small pieces that will burn easily to get the bigger pieces burning, just like any fire. But you need to watch it. So you're going to clamp the lid on and put the clamp on it and screw it down. And you're going to watch your smoke. When the fire's first starting, you'll have a little bit of smoke coming out of the chimney. What will fool you is once that thing gets good and hot, you won't see any more smoke at all.
It's such a clean burn. Because
it is burning. It's burning so completely, the firewood around the outside, that there is no smoke. And so you have to get right over there and look at it real closely. You can see the heat, and it's just shooting out. Or put your hand up there and it's like, whoa, that's really hot.
Very similar to a rocket stove as far as when that thing gets hot, it just burns so clean.
Yes, it does. Yeah, and it does not, the only pollutants, if you want to say that go into the atmosphere when you're first starting the fire. After that, it is completely consumed. The only thing you're putting out is maybe carbon dioxide, which are good for your plants.
One thing we will say, we did rake everything away a good 4 or 5 feet from this barrel just to ensure that there was no chance of heat setting anything on fire, because it gets really hot. But the good thing is, once you start it and it gets going and rocking and rolling, you walk away from it and don't touch it again till the next day.
Yeah, and I forgot to tell you, on the 55-gallon drum, I did set it on pieces of broken concrete stepping stones, because remember, the bottom of the barrel is where you're sucking all of your air in. The 2 inches around, but then also underneath the very bottom. So it can't be sitting on the ground. It needs to be set up to where that air can get up underneath there.
Tell me about the chimney, because we talked about it, but tell me how you put that on that lid.
Basically, and everything I bought off of Amazon. I bought a flat flange. So you've got to cut a 6-inch hole for a 6-inch pipe. And there's several different options for the flange. But what I bought, you just simply screw it down. The only improvement that I would make if I were building it again is I would probably try and find some sort of fireproof gasket material. Not because air leaks out around that flange. It's because when that thing's sitting in the rain, water collects on it, and a little bit of water will sneak in underneath that flange into the inside. Now, the bottom of the barrel's got holes in it, so it doesn't really matter. It just, if you're trying to burn charcoal in the rain, you don't want that water going in while you're burning some charcoal. So 6-inch flange, 6-inch pipe. So it's a 6-inch chimney pipe, 2 foot long. And then I bought a 6-inch chimney cap to go on the top of it so that we could be operating it while it was raining outside.
Okay.
And then once it's done and you open it up, that's always like, did it work? Because we had a few that didn't, but, it's really exciting when you unpack it and you get to take that inner can out and turn it over so you can take the lid off. And inside is this beautiful charcoal. And it's the most amazing because it sounds like tinkling glass. And that's when you know you've done it right.
So you take a piece of wood that started out an inch thick piece of wood, which you could in no way break with your hands. And you take it out as a piece of charcoal and you go snap. And it makes the most satisfying snap, like almost like breaking glass.
And then after you pull it out of there, then that's when we dump it into the can with the ready water that's already got all the nutrients ready for it.
The poop water.
And we just leave it in that for a few days. Like I said, at least 3 days. It can stay in there longer depending on when you're ready for it. Then when I scoop it out of there, I put it into a tub. And then I take a 2x4 because it's the easiest thing for me. And I just use the end of the 2x4 and just crush that biochar down to a more manageable. You don't want to put humongous chunks in your garden. It'd be better to put the smaller pieces.
What, about the size of marbles, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, it can be, you don't want to pulverize it. You don't want it like powder, but you don't want it, massive either. So you kind of find what works good for you. And then at that point, I then take it and put it into my garden. And like I said, sometimes I would actually put it right where I was planting my seeds. And then I would just come back and put a hole right through the biochar, put my seed in the ground, then cover the whole thing up with wood chips after I put the biochar in. So I've done a little of both. I've done where I put it in the whole garden, or a garden section, and then also where I put my seeds.
I'm just trying to envision this in my garden. So my garden's going to look a little black, right?
Not really. I mean, it's funny because initially it will. I mean, when you first put it in, but it does because you put the wood chips on top of it. So it's not like you're looking at the charcoal sitting on top.
Okay.
But it does, get into the garden and it will create some black into the garden, but it's just going to look rich.
I go out to Michelle's garden, which is, gigantic leaves and vegetation everywhere. And I was looking around the other day. We had someone from the state ag office come by. I was talking to Michelle in the gardens. And I looked around and I could see it was almost like little black polka dots here and there where a little bit, the rain had washed off some of the, the topsoil. And you could see little pieces of the biochar here and there.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's in there doing its job.
Yeah.
That is so exciting. So, any organic matter will work. Is there anything that's preferable?
It's size and density. And so, you don't want anything that's super lightweight, but I will say this. I mean, there's websites out there where people talk about even using their chicken poop and biochar and chicken coop. One of the things we did that I thought was real interesting when we did the small number 10 can, we have sweet gum trees out here, which are horrible, but we have them everywhere. And they drop those sweet gum balls. Well,
Those spiky
those
balls.
sweet gum balls
Yeah.
are like the prime thing to pack into a biochar,
Biochar.
Biochar
So
kiln.
if you've got,
because they already have holes. You don't even have to
Anything.
smash them. You can just take those straight. So, I mean, if I gathered, 16-gallon thing full of them, I could have a whole thing of nothing but sweet gum balls.
So you could put leaves and things like that in there, but you're going to have nothing left.
Yeah,
if
the
you did
leaves.
that.
The leaves will
They'll be
consume.
fully consumed.
It needs to have
So
a mass.
the more dense, the better. That's why I said, like, let's say you've got a small patch and you've got corn stalks. Well, what do you do with the corn stalks? If you don't have something else to do with them, cut them up and run them through as biochar and make biochar out of them.
I mean, I grow sunflowers, big sunflowers, and those sunflower stalks are just, some really serious, material. That would be an excellent thing to throw in. So, it just gives you another way to use the things that are already on your property. Instead of looking at it as garbage, it's beneficial. So now I'm not cursing my sweet gum trees quite so much.
That is so cool. Hey, thank you so much for sharing with us. I can't wait to hear how our audience responds and what questions they have for you. Do you have anything else that our audience needs to know?
Well, I've got a question while
Uh-oh.
you're thinking on
Who's got a
that.
question?
Is anybody doing this commercially out there? Is there anybody like selling this stuff?
There
Or,
is, and that's one of the sites I went to early on, and it was in North Carolina. He was positioned right next to a furniture factory. So he had all their leftover furniture wood, which was wonderful, dense, and hard, and already pre-cut. So he had a perfect setup for his biochar, and he had a massive one that he would do. But he also would let people tour his facility, and he's the one who had the very first big 55-gallon one that we watched. And you can buy it. The only problem is I would just be a little concerned. You don't want wood that's been sprayed with chemicals. You don't want, it treated in a way that's not going to be what you want it treated with if it already comes inoculated. And so, you could do it, just be really careful.
Probably be a good business for someone to do. But locally, I wouldn't suggest that. It takes a lot of heat and a lot of burning to make biochar. So, 55-gallon drum and 16. So a 16-gallon inner drum gets you about 7 to 8 gallons of biochar.
This has been amazing. This is fun.
Oh, I'm glad you think so, because guess what your next project is? Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
To me, what I love about it is if you live somewhere that has contaminated land or that's been contaminated because you bought into buying horrible chemicals or whatever, this can come in and save your land. And that to me is like the icing on the cake.
Yeah. So if you think about dioxins in land and various different pollutants, but also a lot of commercial farms are using actual human sewage as fertilizer in their fields. If you bought some property that had that in there, I would use biochar to get all of that, leftover, forever chemicals that came out of the human waste out of that field to get it back to, the way God created that soil or intended for it to be.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. You guys are just a wealth of information and knowledge, and we appreciate so much your willingness to share with us.
And now for our audience, the question of the day. What is one garden hack that you use to make your soil better? And maybe it's biochar.
Maybe it is biochar.
Put it in the comments. Let's talk about it. And we'll make sure that Dennis and Michelle are available to look at your comments and give you information and answer your questions.
Did you hear? He just offered for you to answer all the questions.
That's awesome because they are the experts.
They are the experts. Hey, thanks for being part of the solution.